Our next speaker was a former technical director of the National Security Agency, has apparently elected to not give a title to his speech. Why is... Oh yeah, intelligence. Okay, well, we're calling the speech, therefore, "There is no such thing as artificial intelligence." And I think people are aware that he has distinguished himself by taking, shall we say, a very unpopular but apparently very truthful position with respect to the matter of Russiagate and many other matters. So I'd like to introduce William Binney.
Is this on? Is this on? Oh?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here to talk to you today about artificial intelligence. Actually, and I really want to address some of the latest developments we've had with Russiagate, the Democratic National Committee emails from WikiLeaks, plus you know, some of the Guccifer 2 fabrications and things of that nature. But first, I wanted to say that this idea, the concept of artificial intelligence, is really it's been around for a long time. I mean, I first ran across it in the 70s, 1970s, and I was saying, well, what is this? You know, and I kept thinking about it, and I said, this doesn't make any sense. There's nothing artificial here. You know, because what they're doing basically is capturing the thought process of humans and formalizing it in a set of code so they can execute that electronically and do it a lot faster than humans. But the point is, there's nothing that isn't known by humans or input to the machine by humans to replicate what humans do. So it's not a question of something just being artificial. It's really tangible. It's the capture of the thought process of humans. And so, given a case in point here, when I was working there at one time, there was a small change. We won't talk about what the change was, but people said at the time, you know, well, we have all this programming going on. You know, well, let's just take all this data, throw it in the computer, and the computer will tell us what the answer is. So, and they, this is the top thinking of NSA people, okay? So you have to understand. They're much like the KGB, okay? So at any rate, that went on for a couple of weeks. You know, I kept throwing the data in and nothing came out. You know, surprise, surprise. Well, and then, you know, of course, I kind of, after a while, I got kind of, you know, upset about this whole process. And I said, well, now I'll take my pencils and solve it. And so that's exactly what I did. I took two other people, and we sat down with pencils and paper, solved the problem, put the solution into the computer so it would operate electronically, capturing the thinking process, and then the whole business worked, and we got the answers. It's the idea, though, that this is kind of what people are doing. They're distorting the thinking process here in the United States. The whole process is being distorted. It's becoming more, some will call political. I think it's more like emotional. It's a shift to emotion as a basis for thought, as opposed to discipline and professionalism. And, you know, I take the case in point with the DNC emails that WikiLeaks had. There's been evidence there that it was downloaded to storage facilities or to a storage device that was present in that data all along, and nobody has looked at it until we took a look at it. Some of our people who are associated with our research looked at this and they said, hey, look at all these, the last modified timing all ended in even numbers. Well, see, the random probability of that happening is 1 in 2 for every time, could be either even or odd, right? So the whole idea is the probability, and we looked at 500 of these, and so the probability of all 500 ending in even is like 1 in 2 to the 500th power. So, and I reduced it to base 10 because people think it base 10 instead of 2. So I said that's 1 in 10 to the 150th power. So I called it an infinitesimal of higher order, and somebody changed it. They said just infinitely small or something, you know. But the idea is that the discipline of looking at data to see what the consistencies are in the data and to figure out what are the chances of that randomly happening, things like that, and using a disciplined thought process instead of emotion. Well, I hate Trump, so therefore he did it, you know. I mean, and that's what the mainstream media does. I mean, I came out with the Guccifer 2. We could prove in a court of law that this guy was fabricating the data. And I mean, he was, first of all, the data he put out there, I mean, it was his big mistake. It's hard to make something look legitimate. If you're really doing something nefarious, and you try to put data out for people to look at to say, hey, see here, I've got the evidence, this is what I did. It really gets pretty hard to be, to make it to the point where people would be convinced, especially if you have people like us looking at it, because we will tear every bit apart, you know. So we just like to know what is the real truth here, not what is the emotion here. We know what the emotion is. Nobody likes Trump. They want to get rid of him, and it's a conspiracy to do that. We had a soft coup from the Department of Justice and the FBI. That's been clear for a long time. Plus, I know some of these people, and they're really not very nice people. Okay, let's put it that way. I had an axiom while I was working in NDAA. I said, well, if a politician opens their mouth and talk, that's 80% chance they're lying. If a bureaucrat does it, it's 90%. Case in point is Clapper or Alexander or any number of them that have been up there. And by the way, they've not been charged with anything, have they? And that Roger Stone gets, what did he do? I mean, he was in for a 5-hour interview. Now, I looked at it this way. If you're in for an interview with the FBI for 5 hours, they're going to talk about a lot of things, and you have to have everything exactly right, otherwise they could charge you with lying. Who could actually, tell everything correctly in a 5-hour interview? You're going to make a mistake somewhere. But they're charging him. They're not doing it with McCabe or any of the other people in the DOJ or FBI, or let alone Hillary Clinton, or any of the people with her, or all that mishandling of classified material by those people. At any rate, going back to our investigation, we had our guys saw this even-numbered pattern in the last modified timing theme, and that's a property. It turns out that is a property of the FAT format, file allocation table format, where you're reading data to a storage facility. Now, that means fundamentally things like a thumb drive or some kind of CD-ROM or something like that, reading it for storage. So it's kind of indexing at the same time, then it modifies the time to the nearest even second. So that implied that this data, that these are the DNC emails from late May, and they're WikiLeaks data. It's on the WikiLeaks posted this. So we're looking at the WikiLeaks data that they had, and it has this evidence of storage, reading to a storage device, which further implies that it wasn't hacked. It was transported by physical means. And that was with the DNC data. So that says that Mueller's indictment is kind of in jeopardy because he no longer can claim the hacking, or he has to now prove that the download did not occur at the DNC network. Otherwise, any smart lawyer would say, well, there's obviously evidence here of a download to a storage device. Where was that, and who did it, and why are you claiming it's the Russians instead of somebody else? So I'm just after the truth here. I think these people will lie through their teeth just to get anything they want. Their whole objective is to achieve their emotional end, and they'll do it any way they can. And I think the evidence is pretty much showing that. I mean, look at what they're doing to Roger Stone and all the other people. They're going back and just interrogating them, and if they don't tell the truth, they get charged with telling a lie to the FBI. Well, the FBI, in my case, in our case, the NSA whistleblowers, the FBI lied to the court to get an indictment on us. They also lied in the indictment, and they also lied with the in the case of the dossier, that Steele dossier. They lied to the FISA court to get one, and the FISA court has known this all along. I mean, it was back in August of 2002 that they discovered that the FBI had lied to them in getting 75 warrants. So, I mean, this is a long-standing, well-known problem that these people lie through their teeth to get anything they want. And look at the business of the national security letters. They lie about that too. I mean, they say this is constitutional. Well, it isn't. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals took it on and said this is unconstitutional. And so the FBI dropped it right away because they didn't want to go any further. If it went to the Supreme Court, the whole nation would know it was unconstitutional. So they can still issue national security letters, and people tend to abide by them and say, hey, this must be right, you know. Well, it's wrong. It's unconstitutional. It's already been in the courts. So it's the same thing about lying and getting the emotion. This is how they're twisting thought. You know, and the whole concept goes back to the sophist school of sophism in ancient Greece. So this is nothing new, okay? You take many different people from different directions and you have them all say the same thing over and over again. What that means is people receiving that saying, gee, this must be true, everybody is saying it, you know? Or people who are in positions of power, like in the House or the Senate or various other places, you know, FBI even. So, I mean, they'll say anything. But anyway, the whole idea is that when you say things like that over and over again, the repetition gets to people. After a while, they simply accept it. I mean, it was Adolf Hitler who said, if you're going to tell a lie, tell a big one and tell it often until it's believed. And then there was Goebbels who said, if you've done nothing wrong, you have nothing to fear. And then we get the NDAA section 1021 that says the president can declare anybody a terrorist threat and imprison them and give them no due process at all, and do that, keep them indefinitely. That's also Special Order 48 issued by the Nazis in 1933. After the Reichstag fire, that's how they got rid of all their political enemies and anybody else they didn't like. So this is a trend that I saw coming right when Hayden started to introduce the process in NSA. It was very clear that this was a totalitarian process, and he started that. And it was all done under the emotional sense of we have to stop another 9/11, when we could have stopped it anyway, but didn't. So, and then that's basically the thought process that happened with the DNC emails, which really were the issue. I mean, this is the one they've been claiming was all along, you know, taken by the Russians and given to WikiLeaks. They can't even show anything going to WikiLeaks. And I would also point out that Julian Assange in the embassy there is watched like a hawk in all different directions. You know, if he yells out the window, they know it. You know, so it's and all of the people that he knows are watched also like a hawk. I mean, everything they do on the internet or the phone network or anything electronic is watched. So anybody giving data to them would be seen, and yet there's no evidence of anybody getting it to them. So my point here is this change of thinking and the destroying the discipline of thought that's been going on, including labeling things artificial when they're not. You know, it's just that continuing process of degenerating, really, the progress of civilization through thinking new things, new items, new ways of achieving things, new ways of doing things. And that basically was under the Stasi when they had this this bulk monitoring of their people. They did it on paper, though. We have it in electronic form, digital form, so it's much more easy to get to. And it's easier to manipulate, change also, and modify. Those are things that they can also do with this. They tried a little bit of that with us. Unfortunately, I was watching them and I caught them at it. And so I have the goods on them. And I keep telling them, let's go to court. You know, I'll bring all this stuff up and we can address everything. And I've got filed affidavits, you know, in the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, also the Ninth, talking about the unconstitutional spying on U.S. citizens. And I used some of the Snowden material as exhibits. And I said, well, I invented half this crap, so I'm ready to testify in court, you know? And the government's trying to keep me out, so. So it's only been going on for 2 years now, so about 6 years with the EFF, so. But the government's afraid of discussing this in open court because they know what they're doing is unconstitutional. I mean, we're getting progress, I think, in Europe. The Austrian government has started to say things like, all this bulk acquisition is, the senior courts in Austria have ruled it unconstitutional. They've also ruled that, and the entire parliament has voted down bulk acquisition in a bill that was being passed there, or attempted to be passed there in Austria. So that was the first country in Europe that started to go and do the right thing. Now the Germans have come out and said now the Facebook, Amazon, all these other companies that are taking data on people and accumulating it to advertise to them and things like that is now illegal. That process can't be used that way. You can't sell their data. The GDPR in Europe also says that the data held by these third-party countries or companies like Facebook and Google, that data belongs to the person who originated it. So that means the individual European citizen owns his data wherever it is. So that if those companies want to transfer that data or share it with anybody, including the US government, well, they have to get the permission of that person. So, and they've been violating that all along. So my argument in Europe has always been the weak Achilles heel in this entire bulk acquisition and spying are the companies doing it. They were assisting the government. You can try to sue the government, but they'll drag it out for decades until you die. You know, that's what they're hoping with me, I think, so. But I'm going to be there to the end. This is... I mean, this is in my view, this is a war. When they raided me, that started the war. And so now it takes two people to end the war, and I'm not giving up yet, so. Okay, and so just to let you know, and then what we were doing with the Guccifer 2 data, which he came out and said it was hacked from Russia again, okay? So you guys are the bad guys, okay?
You know, I must thank the organizers for their brilliant sense of humor to put us together on this podium. But let me underline one thing, that the Russian Federation didn't interfere into William's speech process.
You're allowing me to have free speech, that's all. Okay. So, but anyway, with the Guccifer 2 data, you know, we were looking at that also, and the thing that came out, and I was doing this with Duncan Campbell in the UK, and it turned out that the highest transfer speed for that download, we went through and calculated all of the speeds for every file transferred, and the highest one was 49.1 megabytes, bytes, not bits, per second. Now, that's pretty fast for, you know, a general transfer of data across the Atlantic using the World Wide Web. So, and we asserted that couldn't go across, and then we had, even inside VIPs, we had groups of people who thought, well, it could, because, again, the emotional effect was there, so. But we said, okay, so we're going to try this, okay? We're going to go, so I got some hacker friends in Europe, and some friends over here put a gigabyte of data out. So, okay, here's a gigabyte. See how fast you can get it over there. And the best we did, actually, I worked at the formula that companies are using to limit the use of the internet. Because you can't open up to, like, if I had a terabit or terabyte of data to send, and if I wanted to send it all at once, I mean, I could occupy the line for a period of time and no one else could use it. So the companies, and I think I've got the right formula now, companies have the right to have a limitation on the numbers of, or the amount of data that you can actually pass through the internet. And it worked out to be 0.8 megabytes for a 100 megabit line and 1.6 megabytes for a 200 megabit line, and this is from our testing, and also 12 megabytes per second for a 1.5 gigabit line. So all that works out to be, the equivalent of 10 64 kilobit lines, phone lines. That's the maximum you can use. So at least that's consistent with all the readings we got, and we tried it from Albania, Belgrade in Serbia, Netherlands, a couple of places, and the UK. And the best we got was 12 megabytes per second between two data centers, one in New Jersey and one in London. So that meant that the best we did was less than 1/4 what was necessary to transmit it at 49.1 megabytes. So technically, and I like to do the technical stuff because there's no emotion in it, it's just there, so technically that was not a hack. But the 49.1 and all the other speeds we got are compatible with a download to a thumb drive. So all of that kind of fits, even with the Goose for 2. I mean, and then the real kicker was he had the data from the 5th of July and also from the 1st of September. And we looked at that and said, gee, if you look only at minutes and seconds and ignore the day and the hour, those two files merge just like that, without conflict. Now, what's the random probability of that happening? So there are 9 groups over here, and so I figured it was like 9 to the 60th power, something like that. So it was also a rather small number. So the point is, it's the proof that Guccifer 2 was playing with the data. It's pretty clear what he did. He took a file on one download and then split it into 2, then did a range change on the date and a range change on the hour in one file and let them sit there. So, but if you looked only at minutes and seconds, you could see right through that and merge the two. So it's a total fabrication, Guccifer 2. And yet that's what Rosenstein based his indictment of the Russian GRU, right? So I said he was indicting spies for being spies, And I said, now, if you take the consequence of what he's doing, we have spies who do more spying than any other spies. So does that mean the rest of the world is going to indict our spies for being spies? I mean, this is insane. These people they need to get a brain down there in the DOJ. Yeah. It's all, their brains are artificial, that's right. Okay. Well, I mean, that just shows that the fabrications involved with Guccifer 2 and the basically downloading with the DNC data itself says that all this has just been a manufactured episode from the beginning.
But the positive side, you got to say something about.
Oh yeah. Hey, Dennis is requiring me to say something positive. So I'll say something positive.
You didn't have to tell them.
Yeah. Yes, I did. But the idea is that, and I should say this because we are also doing something positive. We're devising routines and not artificial, of course, but doing routines that will actually work out very large-scale problems like Medicare, Medicaid fraud, things of that nature, without violating anybody's privacy. And also, we have a policy now of building in software that nobody knows about to combat evil at the top. We were assuming we are assuming, since everything is basically a double-edged sword, it can be used for good or bad, as we experienced with the spying, you know. So we need to build things in that we don't document and nobody knows about, unless they go through every line of code. That's basically executable. So that's going to be a real trip for them to do that. So, but the whole idea is that if somebody in the top decides they want to do something evil, then this software will pick it up and automatically alert everybody, and they won't even know what happened. So that's the whole idea, is to do that in a positive way so you can actually succeed at doing things like stopping terrorists or, you know, things like that. Things that they aren't doing now because they're looking at too much data and they don't have enough analysts to look at the data to find the threat coming. So, you know, it's just pathetic what they're doing. It's the change of the thought process, making it more political, more emotional, and not being disciplined and structured. So that's the positive side.
That was really interesting.
Yeah.
I think the exchange that went on between you and Mr. Stresozowski was quite positive as well.